I really want to get in this gag order, with the New York Supreme Court judge who imposes this limited gag order on Donald Trump because of the history of Donald Trump, disrespecting the court. You find this to be quite striking that, number one, the gravitas of any defendant to go in there and disparage, a courtroom. But this isn't now necessary, isn't it?
It is. And I think what the viewers have to understand is this is so unusual. This never happens. In over 50 years of law practice, both as a prosecutor, a defense lawyer.
We're in unprecedented times.
It's not done. And the reason it's not done is because once you start disparaging the judge, disparaging people in the courtroom, you're putting yourself in harm's way because that's the judge who's going to sentence you. It's the judge who could send you to jail or give you probation. So you don't do those sorts of things. Donald Trump is the only one I have ever seen do this and do it in such an outrageous way that has really forced the courts to deal with where does the First Amendment stop and where do we need a gag order in order to protect the judicial system.
It's been unique and continues to be on so many levels. Nick Ackerman, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Donald Trump is under a gag order in his hush money trial. The judge blasting the former president for, quote, threatening, inflammatory, denigrating statements against people at all levels of the justice system, including jurors. The order prevents Mr. Trump from criticizing his former attorney, Michael Cohen, or adult film star Stormy Daniels. Both are expected to testify during the trial. Attorney Seth Berenswag joins me now. Seth, thanks so much for being here. So what is Donald Trump allowed to say and what can he not say?
Well, Mr. Trump certainly lit a match yesterday to the situation with his incendiary comment on social media attacking the judge and his daughter. Promptly after that, there were two orders that were entered. The first order was a gag order. It states that Mr. Trump cannot make negative comments or anything of an aggressive or threatening nature with respect to witnesses, jurors, court personnel, court staff. He is allowed to mention Alvin Bragg, but it is otherwise a broad prohibition. It's also interesting to note that shortly around that time, also Judge Merchan entered another order, and it was short and sweet, but it warned everybody, including the attorneys in the case, that they must abide by all court orders, and anyone that does not do that risks criminal contempt. So clearly Judge Merchan is sending a message. There's a new sheriff in town, and he's going to apply this very strictly.
So Donald Trump's lawyers are not commenting on the gag order, but his campaign called it, quote, unconstitutional, saying basically that, quote, American voters have a fundamental right to hear the uncensored voice of the leading candidate for the highest office in the land. How about that argument?
Well, that's essentially a First Amendment argument for freedom of speech, and the court summarily rejected that. Certainly, there's a balancing that occurs in this sort of thing, and there is a need for the efficient expedition of justice, and a criminal defendant of a very high level cannot engage in actions that would prejudice the proceedings or interfere with the smooth administration of justice. So that First Amendment argument was considered by the judge. It was rejected. And this is really also non-appealable. They can try to fight this, but this is set in stone. Judge Merchan is not going to handle this case as Judge Engoron did also in New York. This is going to be applied very strictly, and he's made a very specific warning that there will be criminal contempt consequences waiting in the wings if someone crosses the line.
Here's another thing that Judge Merchan said. He said he was, quote, unpersuaded by Donald Trump's lawyers that the former president has refrained from commenting on this case compared to others. So basically, the judge reviewed Donald Trump's public statements in other cases when he was deciding whether to impose these restrictions. What do you think of that?
Well, I think that Judge Merchan is demonstrating that he is taking a balanced and holistic review of the record, and he's being very careful. Look, he knows that this is going to be one of the most intensely watched legal unfolding developments and dramas of the year. This is going to be the first criminal trial. Who knows? It may be the only trial. He knows that everything's going to be placed under a microscope. I think that he balanced this under the First Amendment in a very careful and appropriate appropriate way. This is really more of a common way where the court is very careful to ensure that when the proceeding moves forward, that there's nothing that interferes with the administration of justice. So this was a strong signal, and I believe that as he made it very clear, he will enforce it very strictly.
Ellie, I mean, what do you think about this? Because again, he's free to attack the public figures, just not the witnesses or the jurors.
Yeah, I think this gag order is perfectly appropriate because it is carefully crafted. It's narrow. We use this phrase, gag order. Lawyers use it, regular people use it, but it's a bit misleading because when you think of someone who's gagged, like an action hero in an 80s movie, they can't talk at all. Donald Trump can still say plenty here. He can still criticize the judge, the DA. He can say this.
That's why I keep calling it a limited gag order.
It's very limited.
You know he's going to fundraise off this, saying, "Oh, look, they're trying to silence me." When in fact,
exactly.
Again, it's just the public figures he can still go after.
And that's why I think it's going to survive if he appeals. I think it's absolutely going to survive because what this gag order protects is the jurors, the witnesses, and the staff. They're the most vulnerable people. They're the people who need to be protected. They're off limits. Everything else, though, he's free to talk.
What would the punishment, though, actually be?
I mean, as we saw in the civil case, Trump violated that gag order a couple of times, and it cost him a couple of $1,000s. Nothing that was that serious to him. I mean, in this case, it's not clear. It's not like he would get sent to jail right away if he violated it. But the judge also, in a separate order today relating to a challenge to his process of receiving these motions, did have a shot across the bow to the attorney, saying, he's all for zealous advocacy, but he says you have to follow the decorum and the order of the court. Really imposing over these past 2 days, we're starting to see him say, he's trying to keep this in line and trying to impose some order over it. I mean, he hasn't said what would the sanction be if this was violated, but, it could be monetary. It would be a leap to put him in jail.
Yeah, usually the judge would give you a verbal admonishment first, which for an ordinary person is enough to dissuade you, right? You don't want the judge ticked off at you. Then you get into financial penalties, and then ultimately, we're not going to get there, but theoretically, he could lock him up.
How long do you think this trial will go on?
So the DA has said 6 weeks, but trials, having done them, have a way of sliding and extending. Maybe a juror gets sick, maybe a witness's testimony lasts longer. The other thing is, the DA can only estimate the DA's case. The DA doesn't necessarily know what the defense is going to do in their case. Now, a defendant does not have to put on any affirmative case, but of course, the big question is, will Trump take the stand? We don't know, but if he does, this could go 7-8 weeks. I mean, we're going to be busy from mid-April. And Kara's right. The judge reaffirms in this opinion. He says we are on the eve of trial from mid-April through June or so.
Has the Trump team responded to the limited gag order?
So his lead attorney, Todd Blanche, declined to comment on it. His campaign spokesman was saying this is an attack against the First Amendment. It's unconstitutional. The judge explained in the order that this went far beyond what he saw as the constitutionally protected First Amendment speech. They haven't said, I asked directly if they were going to appeal this. They declined to comment on that as well. So we'll wait and see if they do. But, on the point of their witnesses, I mean, Trump has said, his attorneys have said they want to call an expert witness. The judge said that person's not really an expert. So if you're going to call them, their testimony is going to have to be very different than what you think it's going to be. Or it's possibly Donald Trump. They don't have a big list of witnesses, at least so far. They could still change their mind.
I mean, it would be extraordinary if he took the stand.
Oh, my gosh. It would be, I think, reckless, but it would be certainly very dramatic. One important point on the appeal. If Donald Trump tries to appeal this gag order, A, he will lose. B, it will not delay the start of this trial.